let's get going. All right, so let me do my intro stuff. That was one of my lights just fell.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's and you can hear it's like it's still spinning.
Yeah.
It's like literally the cap of the light just fell. I'm glad I wasn't sitting under that. All right. That feels like it could happen in one of your episodes. Just creepily, something happened going down. You guys, you are listening to the Omar the Barbarian podcast, where we talk about what is best in life. We got Kelly Nugent back in the building. We're talking more Exile, her new immersive audio drama. Kelly is an actor, writer, podcast, streamer, role-playing gamer, probably fights crime in her spare time. She does it all and does it all extremely well. Kelly, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you.
I love coming here and talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm excited to talk to you about this. Just for everybody listening, general reminder to all of you, this episode will have major spoilers. If you have not listened to Exile episodes 4, 5, and 6, I want you to stop listening to this and go listen to that and then come back and listen to this. I am begging you. I do not want to rob you of experiencing this the right way. Yeah, it's Kelly, I got to tell you, I've now listened to your show multiple times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, to the point where it was beyond it became like background. Like I just want to put it on and just relive it. And it's a weird thing to want to relive given how, the dark tones, but I love the story that much. And I need you to know that I'm a little upset with you. And you know what you did. You know why I am. Yeah. I'm mad because, and this is the only note that I have, and I'm literally nitpicking. I'm finding fault with a rainbow, so to speak. I just want more. There's not enough Exile, and
It's a problem to have. I'd rather.
That's my I was telling a friend of mine last night. I'm in a brand new D&D campaign.
Nice.
And it's a good one. We have a solid, experienced DM, 3 experienced role players. And I'm talking like immersive role players where, everybody wrote these massive backstories for their characters. Everybody's fully absorbed. And I'm actually playing 2 characters for the first time in it. Anyway, I'm telling a friend of mine, as we were, sort of pregame about Exile. And I'm gushing about it. And she asked me, she's like, is this something that I should binge? And I said, no, you do not. I said, you need to savor this because there are only 6 of them. There are only 6 episodes now. And now that I've heard the whole show, that's my note is I want more. The story is so airtight and so perfect that it's hilarious that my primary issues with it stem from there's not enough of it. Is there any chance that we can get more? Because I feel like there's a lot of story left on the table, and there's a lot that could take place, particularly at the end of episode 4 and at the start of episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, why these choices? What was it that made you say, "I'm only doing 6. I'm going to cut them up this way," and where there seemingly could have been a lot more journey for the hero. You said, "Nope, I'm just going to get there." And do it this way. Why so short, and will you give us more?
I guess my focus was on the the way I broke it up was kind of like her journey with her memories, and then also with like her perception of herself and her perception of what happened. And so I had broken that up, and then I was like, I'm going to write, a little monster of the week for each one of those. So I think between 3 and 4, I think those were the ones, the monster of the week I enjoyed writing the most. I think episode 5 was the one where I enjoyed her like mental journey the most. So I kind of separated it out with like, what did I want her to learn? And how could each monster of the week teach her that with regard to her memories or her perceptions. So that's kind of why I only did 6, because originally when I was just like thinking of this, in a very non specific way, like when I was just like, oh, I'm going to write this thing, I was like, oh, I'll just do like 8 episodes. And then as I was mapping it out, I was like, well, I've already mapped out her journey, and it's kind of in 6 chunks. So I didn't want to spread something too thin that didn't exist. So that's
Gotcha.
kind of why. And then as far as another story for her, I don't know. I don't think, like, I think at this point her story is done. I already am like working on other projects with other people, like not collaborators, but like stories about other people. So I think her story's done.
Oh, that makes me sad.
I think
Yeah.
there might be like one shot things that might happen,
Okay.
but as far as like where does she go from here? I mean, that's like the mystery of it. Like freedom is the freedom for anything to happen, kind of. So her looking at like the unknown is where she ends. Like her looking at the unknown with like, instead of a, oh, I'm so scared, with like a, I can't wait to get back to that, is supposed to kind of mirror your journey of like not knowing what happens with her as a
Right.
listener. Yeah.
No, it's the best. Like you said, it's a good problem to have.
Mhm.
I think I might have even said this to you in an email. I was like, I want more, but at the same time, I'm glad. This is weird. I'm glad I don't have it,
Mhm.
because it's better to wish you had more than
Mhm.
to say, wow, I've got way too much of a good thing. Like,
Mhm.
oh, you know what? She should have stopped here.
Mhm.
This
I
was
mean, there's
yeah.
like, yeah, there's like shows, right, where you'll be um, oh, I would, or like for example, Over the Garden Wall is only, I think it's 10-minute episodes, and that was a huge inspiration for me.
Mhm.
Uh, and people were like, we want more of this story. We want more of like what these brothers are doing, and like there's so much to this world. And the creator of it was like, no, I'm done. And like literally like moved to Missouri or something and just like lived there. Like he's like, I don't need to write more of this story, because to me it's done and it's perfect. So I think that's kind of how I look at Exile. I'm like, I could see where there could be more, there's always could be more, but I'd rather that there could be more than like people being like, there were like, okay, I'm watching the documentary The Vow right now on
Yeah.
HBO. And to me, I'm like, that thing could have been 3 episodes, and it's
Wow.
like 12. And I'm like, every episode, I'm like, when is this over? Because it's so long.
Right. And now you're at the point of no return. Like you're in there. So
Yeah,
you
I just
gotta
want
see
to
it
keep
through. Yeah.
watching it, but I don't like watching it. So I don't want anybody to experience that when they watch my stuff or listen to my stuff.
That is the perfect explanation. Like what did I watch that was like that? It was and I hate doing this because I never want to like bash anything creative, and I hope this doesn't come off that way. But there was a show called, I think it's called Warrior Nun,
Mhm.
where at the risk of talking about something creative or someone's vision, and forgive me if you're listening to this and you had anything to do with Warrior Nun, I am not bashing. I don't do that. I will say this though, Kelly, I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to. I liked the concept.
Mhm.
There were elements of it that I thought were really good,
Mhm.
but it did not do its job in terms of structure.
Mhm.
It set a lot of things in motion that it then robbed you of as a consumer at the end of it, that it just didn't pay off. And I don't mind if you pay it off differently than I expected. In fact, and we'll talk about this sort of foreshadowing, even with Exile, the payoff. And I said this before, the payoff in many ways with this for me was that it paid off differently than I was anticipating, and that's some of the brilliance of it. I don't mind that, but when you set things up and then don't pay them off, uh, it leaves you like you feel, and that thing I think is about 10 episodes or so, and it felt like 10 hours I was never going to get back.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that I'm never getting that time back again. I'm going to want that on my deathbed, and it's
Mhm.
not going to be there.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so this is the better problem to have. I will say this: the cruise, episode
Mhm.
4,
Mhm.
is far and away my favorite episode, far and away. And that's serious because they're all good. Every episode is good for different reasons. The cruise is my favorite, and I wanted to dive into that first
Mhm.
and just say, because I felt like that was where you hit your zone. You knew who this hero was, you knew who she was becoming, and you knew who she would be. And we sort of watched that arc take place over the course of this episode. We sort of watch her level up in this, and it's some of the, and I know you feel like I'm gassing you every time I say this, so I hope you don't. But it is some of the best storytelling I've ever consumed. Um, you have a lot of dark themes that fit the world so well. And it's like you take full advantage of the world that you spent the first 3 episodes building up, and you do that here. And I felt like, you could do an entire show just on the history of the ferry that takes you across. Um, the I just think that it's, again, it's far and away my favorite of 6 shows that of all of them that I like for different reasons. And so I want to dive into that, really top to bottom, because it's my favorite. So, is there anything you want to say before I sort of start and work my way through?
Well, this actually might be a technical thing. I'm just making sure that, do I sound okay to you?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay. Just because
Yeah,
it's I switched microphones so quickly and I was like, I hope that this is the right microphone. That it's this.
yeah. No, you're
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're
And
good.
I'm actually gonna close this window because
Okay. Yeah. No, do your thing.
screaming. I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. This is like what fell out of my ceiling.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so yeah,
Is it like a
it's
diffuser thing?
it's like I've got like the flat lighting, and it just
Just fell out?
it just decided that, yeah, I don't want to do this
Oh,
anymore. I quit. Yeah, and it just fell.
that's so creepy.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Episode 4. I want to start at the top, man. This thing is, like I said, it's my favorite of these shows, and the episode begins inside the cell of our hero. She's been arrested for a crime that I feel like we now feel pretty sure that she didn't commit. And I think it's primarily because she's now convinced that she didn't. And, since we take our cues from her, now we buy in. And she starts things off by saying, I now understand it was a sham. And so we learn a lot just in that one line. So I want you to talk me through this opening scene. Is How much time has passed between Waterman's house and this flashback moment that she's having? Is it weeks? Is it immediately following the events of episode 3? How much time has passed?
I would say maybe like a couple days. I would say probably a couple days she's been sitting with this like what she's learned from Waterman's, and like I think right she's now thought, okay, Waterman represents this power that feels a little bit familiar to the power that Elder Rice and the other elders had over Haven. And so she's kind of like, oh, I don't like these parallels. And she's now remembering things again and kind of going over, what it was like when she was in the cell, and like what it was like when she was uh uh being taken to the hut, and kind of remembering it and hearing the words again and seeing the way people were acting again, but now knowing what she knows now. And so it kind of puts it in this new light. So she's like, oh, it was all fake. It was all like, I am such an idiot. I think that's her moment, is just like, how could I have been such a fool? So that's a kind of, yeah, I think it's like, like right before you fall asleep and you kind of remember things and then you're like, oh, you stupid. It's that, where she wants to kick herself so bad. Yeah.
Got you. It took me a minute. I remember initially, and I'll get to this, I felt like there's a line, and I've got it in my notes here, where I felt like she had this shift, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, and I'll go back to this, but I felt like I was asking myself in retrospect, was this an earned moment? And I'll get to that, but it's what you just said makes me see like, you know what? Yeah, it was. You answered something that I was going to ask you down the road already, but I'll get to that. I love the line here that you have. First, before I even say that, this is the first time we even get a glimpse of what her name might be. We learn her mother's name, and she, and I'm gonna get into that too. But there's a line that you have here that says, "My only source," or a few lines I want to go into. "My only source of kindness was Elder Rice." And then there's a moment where she says, "I tentatively put my hand in his and he squeezed gently." Now, I love this setup because you pay it off later on in the scene when she has to pay with a memory to get on the ferry. So I love that setup. He says to her, "I will protect you. You are so special, so different from the people here. They don't understand that you simply burn too brightly." So this is just a description that you use pretty often, burn too brightly. It comes up here, it comes up later on the ferry, and then again in episode 6. And it feels a bit like the suitcase in Pulp Fiction. Like whatever is in that suitcase is amazing, but we never really get told what it is. What was the inspiration for, and what does it mean, burn too brightly?
So he's kind of, so in that scene when he's like talking to her and he's like, you're so special, blah, 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 blah. There's two things happening here. One is that he's kind of, without realizing, like, he thinks he's just being kind, but he's also a terrible person. So he's grooming her kind of. And he also is talking kind of to himself because he, as you learn later, he projects a lot of his own ideas about who he is onto her because of what we end up learning in episode 6.
Right.
And he also, like, burning too brightly, meaning like you burn too bright so people can't look at you and they don't understand you. And so they dismiss you. And he kind of is like basically saying that like the stuff that he does is the same, which we learn in episode 6, where he's like, well, people just don't understand that I'm so special. I'm so this, I'm so that. And he's projecting that onto her as well. Right. And I purposely had that repeat where he says to her, "You burn so brightly." And then in the moment of the sea captain's villainy, when he says to her, "You burn so brightly," and he's like, "Well, that's probably why they want you," meaning whoever they, like the Cthulhu beasts that they sacrifice people to. And in that moment, she says, "That made me feel sick." And it's because she remembers hearing that from Elder Rice. And she's like, oh, when he said that to me before, I felt so special, but I should have felt sick.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of like, oh, like, now I see.
Yeah. It's just reinforcing. Yeah. Okay. So it's not an actual power or anything that is exuding from her.
It's a pretty huge power.
Okay. So that was what I was wondering. I was like, is it an actual something or is it pure metaphor? It sounds like it's a bit of both. Okay. Let's talk about what I actually wrote here was the villainy of Elder Rice. And I want to read this excerpt from the open. He swallowed and looked down at my hand and he says, "I can protect you." The hope died and I pulled my hand away. He reached into the cell and grabbed my chin, forcing my gaze to his. Don't feel ashamed for asking. And she says, I didn't feel ashamed before, but now I did. How could I have expected him to risk it all for me? I was no one special. I felt stupid for assuming. So I feel like he totally gaslights her here.
Mhm.
It's a powerfully written, dark, revealing scene. Elder Rice to me is the worst sort of villain. He's a villain who thinks he's a hero,
Mhm.
and he is the very embodiment, in my opinion, of false hope.
Mhm.
Metaphorically, to me, he represents men in powerful positions who make empty promises, men who are hiding behind words like special,
Mhm.
words designed to form a manipulative connection, making you think they get you through false affirmation. Um, the best villains I've ever created and written were inspired by my personal pain
Mhm.
and some pretty dark places. And I was thinking about this, caused me to think about Michael B. Jordan, and I've heard him say in interviews about the dark places he had to go in
Mhm.
order to play Eric Killmonger
Mhm.
in Black Panther. So
Mhm.
I was wondering, what inspiration did you have to pull from in order to write for Elder Rice? You know, like what dark places did you have to go to? And if that's too personal, I can cut this
No, it's okay.
question.
I'm
Okay.
very the whole internet knows my baggage. It's fine.
Okay.
Um, so, uh, Elder Rice is based off of many different men that I've encountered in this industry. There
Mm,
have been, many, people that seem to hold, they're like kind of gatekeepers of the industry, right? And they're like, when I first got started in comedy and in just the entertainment industry, there was someone that worked at a like improv school that
mm,
basically to me and he was selling this to everybody that he represented success, that he represented like what he represented Hollywood. Like you could only succeed through him. And he was very like manipulative too. Like he would like make you feel very special in front of
mm,
other people. He would like text me at like all hours. And it was definitely like very inappropriate.
mm,
And at the time, I I had just started in the industry and I remember thinking like I don't know what I'm doing and he kind of was like, "Well, I know what I'm doing." And and anytime I got validation from him, it felt like I was succeeding in the industry. And he knew that. He would, be like, "Oh, I'll introduce you to my agents. I'll do this for you. I'll do that for you. I'll, whatever, whatever." And so I I was thinking a lot about and I was, I was of age. I wasn't underage, but I was thinking a lot about like grooming and how that works and how um men that prey on people with less power,
mhm,
like what do? They build you up and then they tear you down. And they kind of create this thing of like only I can make you good. Only I can like I dictate what you are. And so that's kind of like what is happening with her. Like so he's like literally he just says you're so special. You're unlike anybody else. And then in the next sentence, the second she asks something of him,
mhm,
he's like, "Oh, wow, you're asking a lot, but don't be embarrassed." And he's framing that too as like he's being kind and being like,
right.
"Don't be embarrassed." But really, he's like, "How could you ask me to
Yeah.
risk anything of mine when literally your entire fate is in my hands?" And also, when he's saying to her, like, I can protect you, we'll be safe, all of that. He's talking about himself. He's talking about his own reputation and he's talking about his place of power. Um, and he doesn't see her as he sees her as a person when it works for him. And when it doesn't, he's annoyed and he's like, why is this person bothering me? Like,
Mm,
how could she ask me to do this thing? So it's he thinks he's doing and also by exiling her, right, and coming up with this idea for exile, he's also telling himself like, I'm a really good person. You
Right.
know, I'm protecting her, I'm saving her. When it's like you were the one who got her in that situation to begin with, and 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 you're congratulating yourself. So it really is about like, you know, abusive power dynamics and like manipulation and what drives a person to be like that. But also I didn't want the story to be about the abuser. I wanted it to be about someone learning and kind of processing.
I got you. No, that's like I said, it's pretty powerful. When I was writing this out in terms of thinking through, I mean, and I've been going back and tweaking my notes and doing everything. This was one thing that I knew I wanted to talk to you about, but it was one of those things that that's why I was quick to be like, if you don't want to talk about that, you don't have to, because it's usually the most things that hit you, like you can feel your experience in this,
Mm, yeah.
and it was something that I'm like, all right, if I don't ask her about this, then I'm not doing my job. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's a pretty dark thing to ask somebody to revisit or
Mhm.
to think about or to explain. So thank you
Yeah,
for
of course.
being willing to talk about that, and because it is powerful. And even as I was continuing to go through this episode, there's a lot there that focuses on the shift that she has. And you had mentioned this before, like you're like, hey, how she starts out, talking, and it's not just in the way that the story is written, it's in your performance, like how you perform her
Mm,
shifts as well. It's noticeable the things that she says, and I think this is why this is my favorite episode, because of seeing the transition, and how it happens, and just the things that you unearth, these things that these ideas we've been introduced to in episodes 1, 2, and 3, and now these callbacks to them in episode 4 that you're now starting to see with new eyes as
mhm,
well. There's a couple of things that that you put here where he says, or where she says, and he held my hands and made beautiful promises. Like that leapt out to me. Um, and also as she progressed on, like her own descriptions of what she's wearing.
mhm,
There's a line where it says, and so I trudged onwards, in
mhm,
silly satin slippers. And I love the alliteration there, and a soiled wedding dress. She says, I didn't think of this journey as going home anymore. I needed to see Haven again with my new eyes. I needed answers and something else. The urge tickled in the back of my mind. Revenge. And I was like, oh, okay.
mhm.
And she says that this thought surprised even her. And I absolutely love this shift. I love her new motivation. All of a sudden, it's a revenge story, or maybe it was all this time and we just didn't realize that this is a revenge story. And now her clothes are considered silly,
Mhm,
which you purposely have her change, later on. Like
mhm,
she literally changes clothes, and that's it's a powerful moment. So talk me through this transition, and this drastic shift from where she was, even just an episode ago. Um, why this choice here?
mhm,
What were the things that made you say when you were putting this together structurally, okay, this is the moment
mhm,
where I'm going to insert this, and have that jump.
mhm. So I knew the things that I wanted her to learn. I didn't know specifically like how that was going to manifest. And so a lot of times as I was writing her, because I wrote it sequentially. So when I started writing this episode, I was just kind of writing how I felt like someone would feel after having experienced all of these things. So the progression of her to me was like pretty natural that she would just be she is being beaten down at the beginning of every single episode. It's just incrementally. So like you don't really see it as much. And you know, she starts to seem a little bit rose-colored glasses like in and she kind of knows it maybe in parts of episode 2 and parts more so in episode 3. And then in episode 4, she's like, this was fake. This was a sham. I'm a fool. So, and then the clothes, she's wearing this wedding dress with these satin slippers that were put on her by the order of Mr. Waterman, who represents male power. And so it's like, look at how terribly you've equipped me to go out into this world. Kind of like, and he kind of represents Haven. You know, basically all of these villains represent some aspect of Haven. So it's kind of like, look, the silly wedding dress and the soiled satin slippers are basically her and how she was spit out by Haven to survive in these wilds. And look how poorly, like, can you imagine like trudging through the woods with satin slippers on and a wedding dress that doesn't fit and that's covered in blood and that's like ripped up. Like, so that was kind of to represent the roles that women are often put in and then are expected to, like, they're often put into a like diminutive stance and then expected to are expected to fail because of that. So that was kind of representing that. And I had her change clothes into what is like stereotypically gendered male because I wanted the moment in episode 6 where she asks Elder Rice if he would have exiled her if she was a woman.
Super. Oh man. And it's that might be the hottest line in the entire, because when he gives his response, what's hilarious is that I was kind of I was acting out the scene with you. I'm listening to it, and I jokingly gave his answer before you said it, or before the other actor said it.
Yeah.
And when he said it, it was like, holy crap, she went there. You know, where, well, hold on, I want to get to that. What I also found interesting was that you never tell us what this hero looks like. In fact, you go out of your way to make a point to say, I'm not going to describe her to you at all. Even to the point of writing in opportunities, which I thought, I don't know if you meant to do this or if it was a happy accident, but you insert mirrors that she won't look into throughout, at different points, going out of your way not to tell us what her name is, not to provide any description of her physical appearance. In an age where we literally have invented machines whose primary focus is to take images of ourselves to show the world, that is a very powerful choice to never tell your audience what your main character looks like. So tell me about the hero and why you chose to tell us quite literally everything about her, except her name and how she looks.
Well, I do have 2 moments where I think you learn like you learn that she has brown hair.
Well, okay, right.
And then you also learn that she has like golden tan skin.
Yes.
But otherwise, you don't know if because like, how a lot of books are like, if I had to look at myself, I'd say that I was 5'7" and I had amber hair and I had this. And it's like this whole thing. So like, to me, I wanted her to be able to be anybody. And also like what she looks like and what her name is doesn't matter because those are, assigned to us by other people usually. And also we, in that world, and I think in this world as well, who we are is like defined by what other people see us as. And that's how she's seen, is like people respond to her, people react to her. So like she is only like I wanted this entire story to be like that the self a lot of times is created by other people and they tell you who you are. And it's a question of, well, if I take that away and I have the choice to be who I want to be, who am I? And that kind of comes from like, I grew up with a very, 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 very strict upbringing, super strict, really, really, really bad. And
Wow.
yeah, so like to a point where like when I went to college, and I went to like Ralph's at 4 p.m. and I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm at the grocery store because I want to be at the grocery store. Like that.
Wow.
So a lot of that, like the idea of freedom, like is like very pervasive in this story. And like, I also wanted us to not really know specifically what her name is or what she looks like because she doesn't know who she is and she's learning that. So I don't know. Yeah, I was kind of playing a lot with the idea of self and like how we conceptualize self. Is it something that people ascribe to us? How much of that is us accepting what someone's ascribing to us? Just point blank, like just yeah, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm this, I'm that. So that was kind of why I didn't want us to like be like we know exactly what she looks like and we know exactly what her name is because I think self is bigger than that.
I think you nailed it in a way that wow, there's a lot there. You could do a show just on that. I have a friend of mine who I'm also not going to reveal any names or anything like that, but suffice it to say, this person told me because of I call it their superpower, but it is the average person looking at it is going to look at it and see it as a malformation. They've got a protrusion that comes out of one shoulder, and they can't bend their arm all the way down. She's absolutely stunning in terms of not just inwardly as the person, just one of the best human beings I've ever met, but just beautiful, just gorgeous. To look at her, and it becomes this thing where this thing that she's lived with, is it starts out being one of the first things you notice, and then you like never see it again as you get to know the person. We began talking one day, and I learned more as we discussed this, and just some of the experiences that she's had that have created the person. And something that she said that just struck me and stuck with me was that she, in this age of devices that is designed to take selfies, she avoids the mirror. She only looks in the mirror out of necessity, just to kind of get ready in the morning, and then does not look at it again. Now, I share that just because I wanted to tell you this piece, which is I told my mother that story, and she cried and changed her whole perspective on her sense of self-worth from this other testimony. So when I listened to this in your story and just how powerful it was done, in that you kind of turned self on its head, and defining of oneself on its head, in that you, by never telling us her name and giving us very little to go off of in terms of how she looks, again, in an era where there's a premium on worship of self, in all of the twisted and terribly wrong ways that we tend to do it. It's a powerful choice to give the audience, who is living this story out through her eyes and through her, by not defining it. You defy all of the, not only cultural norms, but structural norms of writing. And in a way, you give us back ourselves and say, you are now free to choose who you are. It's a powerful sort of turn on itself, that if that's intentional, man, that's powerful. I don't know that you could have pulled that off any better.
Thank you.
It was like, it felt like something like, as I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't know how you do that intentionally. You could have the best of intentions of trying to do something like that. I don't know how you pull that off. Did you just end up there, or did you say, nope, I'm going to do this and I expect to have this outcome?
Well, I have always found like what makes the self a really interesting question, especially, if you've experienced trauma. It's like how much of that has informed who I am. And like, is that thing forming me, or am I the callus? Am I the thing that decided to make myself that way? And I wanted to frame it like that. I wanted to frame it like, not like, oh, well, it's a good thing that like that horrible thing happened to her because then she wouldn't be who she was. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's not what it is. That
Right.
thing happened to her and she changed her, because she could have just died in the woods.
Yeah.
Could have just done that, but she didn't. And so to ascribe like, and that's the thing, right? Is that like, if you would ask Elder Rice, he'd be like, oh, I did that. I made her the way she is.
Mm.
No, you didn't. You acted how you were always going to act. That's your nature. She reacted. And I also wanted people to, so I wanted people to understand that and to feel that. And also, so I wanted people to experience this and kind of be like, well, what makes me me? Because I have specific moments when she refuses to look in the mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's because she's in a place where nobody's telling her who she should be. And she's afraid to see who she really is. So she's like, if someone's not telling me who I should be, who am I? I'm kind of afraid to look. And so that's why she never looks. And at the end, she knows who she is. So yeah, I feel like that's a common theme in a lot of my work, is like self, like what is the self, like how much of it is us making choices and how much of it is something, a reaction, so it was intentional.
Gotcha. It's very well done. It is, as I was thinking about it and, sort of walking through it, it became one of those things where it's like, I don't know that I've ever had something like that I have written that has come back super powerfully, that I was like consciously aware I was making that choice, and I wanted, when I've tried to do it, it's never come out how I wanted. And it was when I'm not trying, and that the muse takes over, and
Mm-hmm.
you look up and you go, oh man, I didn't even mean to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what that was produced. So the fact that this is a called shot is extremely powerful, because it's so surgical the way that you do it, and it lands
Well,
very well. Yeah.
I think the reason why I'm happy with how this turned out, and it wasn't like didactic and like, like pontificating, was
Right.
because it's a question and a goal. But as I was writing it, with every step, I wasn't like, I need to make sure this happens. That's just something that's important to me. And then that I wanted the character to experience. And I think by virtue of writing it with this like first person, as if she's telling you, um, that kind of amps up the empathy a little bit. So
Mm.
it causes the viewer to, or the listener to be like, oh, yeah, I mean, like, what if that was me? Like, I remember moments like that, because it's kind of like the way she talks is kind of conversational. Even though it's like pretty heavily written, my goal was that it was like heavily written, but sounded like she was talking.
Yeah, you pull it off. We haven't even gotten into your performance yet. And in fact, I'll take a minute here and just say there are a lot of things that I think I was telling you, I had two notes, and one you already spoke to. One was, and they actually they spawn off of one another.
Mm-hmm.
The first was, okay, there's not enough of this. I'm mad that it's over. The second was, like I said, there was a moment where I was like, is this shift earned? It was her
Mm-hmm.
shift. And I felt like, looking at it and listening to it, I'm like, all right, that's why first thing I asked you was how much time had passed, because it felt like she was announcing, things that I had not seen her go through yet. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like where she was in terms of, wow, this is a sham, this is this is that, were things that she would come to after the cruise, which is why I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wow, we should have more here
Mhm.
But as I'm talking to you, and as I thought about it more, and as you told me what you told me, no, it makes total sense that she would have this. And I think because part of me was like, well, do I buy it because it's an earned transition, or do I buy this because Kelly's so good at acting that I just, yeah, I'm on board. The I do feel like it was earned, but your selling of it as an actor really drives it home,
Oh,
and it allows it to be very succinct,
mhm.
and we get there, and it's powerfully done. Your performance was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the cost of getting on the ferry.
Yeah.
This is a brilliant stroke that you do, where in order her cost to get on is a memory,
Mhm.
and very cruelly you make her give up like she's already losing her mind. She tells us this, and you take from her a memory of her mother, and it's a weeping sort of moment when you the way you deliver it, in terms of your performance, and just the line, and when I think about this, one, it's a beautiful callback to tentatively put my hand in hers,
Mhm.
um, and it calls you back to Elder Rice, and you think about the things that she hung on to, and the things she could have given up. And the one thing that came to mind. Now, again, you never really tell us how this works. It's like, it seems like it was just the first thing that came to her mind,
Mhm.
and they took that. And unfortunately for the hero, it's a memory about her mother that she literally, as she's describing, it says, "Yeah, it's gone. I don't know what else happened." And the person taking the fare says, "Oh, wow, you overpaid. Well, I'm sorry, no refunds." And it's just one of those things where you're just like, my God, man, what else can you do to this person? Like, well, and literally that's enough. Like what she's been through to this point is enough. And little do we know, the worst is yet to come
Mhm.
in this episode. Talk to me about the memory and why this choice to make her give that particular memory up to, like as opposed to something else, and that whole sequence. Like what brought that about?
Well, so uh, everything, this entire thing is based off of memory. Even telling, the Monster of the Week stories, which are like more recent memories. So the only thing she has, her only form of currency would be
Mm,
memories. Like that's what she values is memory. And so I thought to myself, like, oh, that'd be kind of like a cool, spooky thing is like that you have to pay in a memory. Um, and then I always go by the mantra, you have to love your main characters, but you have to be cruel to them. So like you can't just be mean, right? You have to like it teaches her something, which is that all she has are these memories.
right.
When someone is gone from your life, all you have of them is your memory. So I truly was like, what's the cruelest thing that I can have her act? And you have that, right? Like sometimes in the same way that like, let's say you're just sitting there and all of a sudden, even though you don't want to, you remember something very embarrassing you did or
Yeah.
and why would you choose to think of it? You wouldn't. So for reasons you don't know, your mind goes to this and then you're like, no, stop thinking about it. And it keeps happening. So that's the thing that happens to her then, which is like something she doesn't want to bring up and it just does. And what I was trying to capture there with the performance and kind of with how she says it is the strange kind of like empty, far away feeling of loss that you have after losing something you don't remember. Like she doesn't know what it is she lost, but she knows it was something important and she'll never get that back. So that was kind of the goal that I was going for that scene.
Gotcha. No, that's good. It's good. I love what you said there about love your main characters, but you got to be cruel to them. That I will take to the grave with me. That is a powerful author, writer note that I'm going to just file away and hopefully not have to pay by losing that one. That's a that's a good one. that I'm absolutely going to steal for stuff that I'm, that I'll keep in mind,
Mhm.
for things, that I've got coming up. One thing I'm trying to recruit you for. The
Mhm.
I want to talk too about, just briefly, Annalise put her foot in this one. The music on
It's so good.
episode 4, oh
Yeah,
my
it's
God.
so good. The, like, dun, 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 like, it's
Yeah.
so, like, I was like, I want, like, Lovecraftian, we're going on a sea adventure, but something is gonna go wrong. That was the
That was the note you
note
gave
that I
her.
gave her, and then I got that, and I was like, "It's perfect!"
Oh, it was perfect.
It was
It
perfect.
was, the backdrop, it's, well, one, just, everything she's done has been phenomenal. And the two of you are like hand in glove. But this episode in particular, the and I think it kicked in like once the hero was on the ship and she goes and gets 2 plates of food. And I don't know what the significance of, but it seemed like everybody had like 2 plates and there's like plenty of food and so forth. And she finds herself sort of stumbles up to the captain's, table. And, there's some interesting sort of banter going back and forth there. And we don't know it at the time, but you're setting things up in this scene. It's not just a Tarantino-esque, hey, we're going to sit around a table and we're going to dialogue,
Mhm.
about, different things. It's
Mhm.
you're planting, foreshadowing breadcrumbs of
Yeah.
things to come, which I felt like it was so brilliant. We already talked about how she quickly changed her clothes and she leaves her old clothes, on the ground. And she says, I did not want them anymore, which makes sense, given what they were and what they
Yeah.
represented. And you talked about what she changed into and those choices. What I love about this scene that follows, you've got three ideas that you introduce at this point. And really up to this point, we're about, I'd say in runtime, I think we're at this point, we're about 18 minutes or
Mhm.
so into the episode. And you've already got a ton that you've dropped on the listener. And you're kind of like, okay, wow, I got 30 minutes to go.
Mhm.
Because this episode is like 48 minutes long. And you're like, man, what is she going to do when I've got all this heavy stuff that's already hit? We got all of these ideas that have been introduced. You see the level up, you see the things that, the flashback moment in episode 4 is different this time because she's not longing for Haven. She's like, I'm going to go back to Haven and whoop everybody's ass,
Yeah.
on that. So it's like, ooh, okay, I'm here for this. So once she's changed her clothes, she's like, the level up is kind of halfway, complete. You got a little bit
Mhm.
more to go that we get. So what I liked here that you did, and it's, I don't just appreciate it as a fan, but as a writer, because I know how hard this had to be to do. And this could have gone off the rails
Mhm.
easily, but you found a way to tie these together. And I think this is why this is my favorite episode, because you pull it off and you pull it off. So it did not feel forced. You did not, are you familiar with the term luck dragon?
Not really, no.
Okay, so a luck dragon in writing, I'm trying to remember who I learned this from, is essentially you write yourself into a corner and then, oh man, it was so lucky that this thing that wasn't there
Oh, so, like,
before. Yeah,
Falcor and Neverending Story. Yeah,
yeah,
okay, cool.
yeah.
So in Deus
So
Ex Machina
that's
for,
literally
like,
what they got it
middle of the
from.
story.
Yes,
Okay.
that is
Okay.
literally the example that they
Yeah, yeah,
give.
yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hey, oh wow, this dragon out of nowhere,
Yeah.
yay!
Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
you did not have to pull anything out of your butt. It was you set it up and you knocked it down. So I wanted to talk through that with you. So we get these falling crates that nearly kill the hero, along with some mysterious gray swirls that she notices and kind of dismisses, in the water. And she finds herself an accidental recruit into a mutiny because the captain that she literally just met is actually this faux captain. And oh, by the way, there's something called the lotto.
Mhm.
And these ideas get introduced. Again, like I said, I love that none of it felt forced. You introduced them, you develop them en route to the third act, set them up, you pay them off, you do so perfectly. And so, first we see the hero nearly get killed, and the captain checks on her. But by now we know that really nobody in this world is to be trusted. So I already think he's up to something.
Mhm.
Second, we know that she has two things in her pocket. One is a scrap of fabric, which makes her an unwilling participant in a mutiny. The
Mhm.
other thing is her lotto ticket, which is also her boarding pass, which we find out later on. And we also learned that the true air quotes captain, that we later learned probably came into power the same way that the current captain did.
Mhm.
And at some point, I love the backstory of how the heck the Mudguppy Fairy got into this weird infinite loop.
Mhm.
Uh, and also, we also learned that there's this greater potential threat looming that we really need to be thinking about, that that everybody's aware of, but nobody's really thinking about yet. So, talk to me about these elements and these choices, and what inspired you to world build in this way.
So I started with like the lesson I wanted her to learn,
Okay.
which was that the person that the person that tells you that they're trying to save you isn't always trying to save you. And that you can either continue the cycle and just stay complacent, because even by like doing these mutinies and like they're not doing anything, right? They're just perpetuating this cycle where sometimes he's the captain and sometimes she's the captain. And it's just kind of, I mean, maybe it's like my general uh, lack of faith in a two-party system, and like kind of like, oh, really, is anything in it, that kind of thing. And I felt like I wanted her to learn to be like, oh, I need to ask questions, and I need to change things. I can't just do what the role is. Like, I can't just rebel in a way that's prescribed to me,
Right.
because that way is prescribed by the person in power, and the person in power wants to keep that power. And so these two people, I wanted her to be like, oh, now we have the real captain. The real captain's like, yep. But that the second that she comes into power, there's a group of people who say, oh, the real captain is in the brig. We need to break him out. So it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And no progress is made. And she's like, after she leaves that ship, she's like, okay, they have their like messed up situation. I'm glad to be gone of that, because like I can't keep staying in the cycle anymore. I have to break it. The moment of the crates, I wanted that to be like the classic horror fake out.
Okay.
Like, oh God, oh, it's just a raccoon or a cat or whatever. And then like 5 seconds later, the actual killer comes out. So I wanted her to two things. I wanted her to dodge the crates and then be like, whew, I'm glad all that's done with. Now
Right.
space travels. And it's like, you idiot. Of course it's going to. And then also the moment of, they clean it up and they go back to normal. And she said that she says there's no evidence of what had happened except for the scratch or the crack on the plank, which is like the damage that people do to other people. And then they apologize and they're like, oh, it's fine, right? And you're like, but I've
Yeah.
still been hurt. So that's kind of what I was going for with the crates. And I just like Cthulhu thing. Like I like that kind of like spooky, witnessing this like absolute horror is going to drive me into madness. And I wanted her to see parallels. So with Mr. Waterman, he's like straight out the gates, this guy's bad. Like
Right.
so bad, he's so creepy, he's evil, 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 evil right away. And so I wanted her to see like at the core of what Elder Rice is. And then with this new captain, I wanted her to see the face that he gives her, which is this charismatic guy that makes you feel very special, right? Because like she ends up sitting right next to him and everyone makes fun of her, but then he's like, oh, you know what? Like, let's get you some new clothes. Let's get you taken care of. When he rushes over to her after she's fallen,
You're right.
she's like, oh, okay, well, he's like taking care of me. But at the same time, you see that he's looking to the sky and he's
Yep.
looking to the water because he can't have any of the goods damaged before
Yep.
they get to where the sacrifice has to happen.
Right.
Because he keeps saying things, right? He's like, you don't want to wear bloody clothes for the rest of your days, meaning you're probably going to die on this trip. Or him being like, we can't have our passengers not in one piece. It's like, for what end though? And it's
Right.
to cover his own ass. So
I love it. The yeah, it's a yeah, okay. So that one I figured, when I was especially when I was rereading through it and re-listening to it, it felt like I didn't think about the callback to Elder Rice, but I certainly see it now, and it's so very well done. The mirror images and the things that you were doing there. So let's talk about the creepiest thing in this episode. Okay, and I'm talking creepier than crab things coming out of people's throats, and that's creepy as hell. But there's nothing creepier in this episode, frankly, in this story, than this shrine that pops up. I mean, seriously, Kelly, what the hell? The line is, what does she say? I crept over to a door and it swung open, flinching. Clothes, waistcoats, silk shirts, scarves. I felt silly, smiling to myself. I walked over to another door, swung it open, and my stomach dropped. And so did mine as I was listening to this. Some kind of shrine, but not to the creator, something else. The shrine itself was carved into some kind of black stone. And when I reached for it, the hair on my arm stood up. A golden goblet sat on one end, the inside of the cup stained deep red. The rest of the shrine was covered in droopy pillar candles, and at the center, a statue with her hands outstretched. It was a woman nude. In between her breasts, another set of arms extended, and 4 hands held a baby. The baby's mouth was open, and out of its mouth burst spidery legs clawing at the air. I was like going, like I wasn't quite asleep. It was, but it was bedtime, and I've got, the headphones on, and
Yeah.
so like it's late. I'm listening to this, and this, like this is one of those like, man, I might have wet the bed fear moment. Talk to me about this shrine and the spider leg, baby thing. What even is this?
So, as we see later, when the three
When they come
are
up
in the circle, basically it's like the idea of sacrifice. So, this woman is offering, and it's kind of like this woman / like demigod type thing, as she has the all 4 arms holding the baby. And for me, that was about. Have you seen The Thing, John Carpenter?
Yeah.
So it's about like extra, like it's about like the mishmash of like the body horror of like these extra things like bursting out of you and stuff. So it was, the statue is kind of representing like sacrifice and kind of what happens to you. You're either killed right away or you turn into something very scary and evil that kind of pushes people to kill you right away, to sacrifice you, because otherwise it's going to get much worse. And they need to take 3. And kind of in the mythos there, right? Like in that mythos, they have to take 3 and they have to take the 3 that are chosen. We find out that that's false, but that's how they keep people in line, and that's how they make sure that they can get across safely. So yeah, it was like I was trying to capture this ritual with just one image. And so that was like the image that stuck out to me.
Yeah, that's a powerful image. It was very creepy. And I loved it. And it just, and again, just the way that you explain it, the how she happened upon it. Like you again, you're listening to this and you're like, what else is going to happen to this poor child? who is, so at this point you're fully on board with rooting for her because, this episode went to such places that it had to go to set things up in episode 5 and 6 that uh seem almost tame
Mhm.
by what she goes through here,
Mhm.
so that by the time why she's so hard
Mhm.
by the time we get to the end, because
Mhm.
after this you survive this, and it really I think it really happens, like the final part of the level up for her to me was when she finds herself losing the lotto, one of the losers in the lotto, um and she discovered somewhere along the way this carving fork that she kind of just hid and has on her and attacks the captain. And I love your line where you say, all I felt was rage and it felt good. I wanted to keep feeling it. And I knew that killing this man would keep the rage burning. I absolutely love that. It's the full circle of she's just like this. All right, F this stuff. Done.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like the payoff here is that ultimately everything you set up didn't matter.
Mhm.
And that was sort of the point. It was simply there to serve as almost this sort of stairwell up
Mhm.
for her. Um, it's more powerful to me that she could give a crap
Mhm.
about it. In fact, I think the line is, there. I had honestly forgotten. Like at the point where she's about to like kill this dude, the other people who had been with her were like, "Yes, we've
I
got him, and
know.
now we can get the true captain." And she was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about your whole true captain thing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really did not care." And so she uses that moment to her advantage. And of course, we have everything that transpires after that, where one of the people, because the sacrifices don't happen fast enough, one of the people who was in the center, who one of the other losers of the lotto, turns into one of these creepy spider leg things. What are they called, by the way? What'd you call
I
these
don't
things?
know. They
Or
were
you
just
you actually named them?
things. No, I never used a name. So basically it's um like at your neck is like where it starts to like burst out and
Right.
then kind of turns your body like upside
Oh,
down.
kind of upside down. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then so it's like burst out from the top, and then your face, like the eyes are at the chin because your head's upside down. Um, yeah, I just wanted to really make it pretty messed up. I was like, I just wanted it to be very, scary.
Yeah, that it absolutely was. I loved your storytelling in that, and everything that go, particularly the gruesome way that that person who through no fault of their own turns into this thing and then loses an eye just trying to
Mhm,
pull away.
mhm,
The her battling these crab spider things, and then basically just after she gets through all of that and you think she survived, her own throat starts to itch. And now you're like, and I'm sitting there listening to this going, are you really about to turn this poor child into one of these things after everything that you've done to her? You, it's like this episode 4 is 2020 as far
Yeah,
as
no,
I,
it is.
concerned.
The
Yeah.
moment that she's like on the crab's back trying to stab it, there's like scary creatures like coming out of the ocean that are pulling people under. There's a storm. There's like these people that are like, yay, the true captain, and her being an outsider that are like, that she's like, how can you care about this true
About
captain
any of this.
when
Yeah.
the world is ending? Like that kind of like, so for me, like that, because I've had some dark thoughts when I've like been doing dishes where I'm like, everyone's beholden to money, something must change, and I'm like, oh, Kelly, you gotta calm down. So I'm like, I need. So like, it's based off of that, of like her like seeing this and being like, I can't believe these people are fighting about this like this thing when they're all evil. And like we need like to her, she's like burn it all down and start over. And they're like, but we can't because that would be scary because that's unknown. And she's like,
Yeah.
well, I choose unknown. Goodbye. And so she leaves. But yeah.
It's you just alluded to it, and this is where like, so literally after everything, she survives all of that. Everything comes back to air quotes normal,
Hmm.
And we learn that it's really just a reset,
Mm-hmm.
and they're stuck in this vicious cycle. And you've already talked about it. It was very powerfully written out where the hero says, wait a minute, so you're telling me that all this is just going to happen again? You're just the same? And the new captain, or I should say, when the so-called real captain, when they just swap places,
Mm-hmm.
you find out they're related.
They're twins.
They're twins. And you're like, wait a minute. And she says, I love how you put it. You were like, she spoke to me as if I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, well, yeah, that's how it goes. And she says, call back to the curator. There must be a different way you can get across.
Mm-hmm.
You can change things. What is the line that was written on the wall? What
So
is it
what do
that
you
you
want?
want? What do you want? This is just another way of, calling that out. And now she's echoing the curator, and the captain's like, are you feeling okay?
Yeah.
It's she talks about, like you said, if we break the cycle, how do we know what would happen? And it's again, she says, if we break it's not a question, it's a statement, but it's so like, wow, what would happen if we broke the cycle? It's both a statement and a question, which again,
Mm-hmm.
you do a lot. Um, Very, very powerful episode. Far and away my favorite one in the whole thing. And again, and that's saying
Thank
something because they're all amazing.
you. Thank you.
So just like I said, we just talked about that for like an hour. It's
Yeah.
that, and the episode's not even that long, but there's so much to
Yeah.
unpack there. Then we get into episode 5, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully you say, okay, after I just did all of that to you, I'm now going to just give you a minute to breathe. It's like you give us a minute to breathe,
Mm-hmm.
in episode 5. And episode 5 is powerful in its own way, in that it feels like it's the only episode that we get that is, and if I'm off on this, you're the creator of this, you correct me. It's the only episode that feels like, one, it doesn't have a monster of the week. It
Mm-mm.
is fully reflective on the past, but it completes the level up
Mm-hmm.
that started at the top of episode 4. Really, that's been going on up to this point. In that you uh, have this, again, these mirror images where she sees herself literally,
Mm-hmm.
um, both in the past. We get this story, this breakdown of where first time we see Elder Rice like strike her and lock her in a cellar,
Mm-hmm.
and her mother being helpless,
Mm-hmm.
nearby, and you kind of get a bit more of just what the villainy that this dude was doing in the past. The way that the story sort of breaks out is this tree falls and knocks down part of the wall in Haven, and for the first time, the hero can look out and see that there's something beyond the wall. We don't know this at the time, but she is the tree
Mm-hmm.
that has fallen in and broken the wall, which I thought was brilliant how you worked all that out, and even your descriptions about her transformation
Mm-hmm.
into this tree that is now rooted in the very place that she was trying to make it through. She is now a part of,
Mm-hmm.
metaphorically, and the breakdown of all of that and how you describe all that is wonderful. There's more reveal of Elder Rice, and just his villainy at this point is no longer speculative. It's concrete. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's in your face. Like, okay, this dude is Bill of Kill Bill.
Yeah,
He
he's
he he
bad.
got he got to go.
He's gotta go.
Yeah, and I love your line where you said, I had seen Elder Rice's. In fact, well, hold on, let me walk it even back. She talked about her mother's face and how she saw it pale in the window, and talked about their raised voices. So you're hinting at this relationship between her mother and Elder Rice. And we talked about before how dudes just dropping by, and the things you find out later on, and you can certainly extrapolate the type of relationship that he had forced upon her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother trying to resist, but really not being powerful enough, to resist, and how she was guarded, probably to protect her,
Mm-hmm.
is what, was my takeaway. And how she said, I had seen Elder Rice's anger, but also the way he had calmly held my emotions in his palm. And she says, and this is very powerful to me, he didn't see me as a person who could survive, which is like, whoa, okay. And then at the end, you say, exile was not a gift from Elder Rice, but a death sentence that I thanked him for after he killed my mother. While the council congratulated themselves on their benevolence, but by sending me into the wilds to die, they turned me into the very thing that would destroy them. I tightened the straps on my pack and walked towards Haven's walls. I would kill them all. And I like stood up and applauded. I was like, hell yeah. Let's ride. Let's go get them. Talk to me about episode 5. There's a ton there, but it's really sort of the period at the end of her level up to me. But walk me through it. What were you thinking when you came up with episode 5 and these choices?
So I think it's kind of the feeling of when you get away from your abuser and you've had time, like, because like your life is them, right? Like up until this point, all she talks about is Elder Rice. All she talks about is Elder Rice, her and Elder Rice, her and Elder Rice. He did this, he did that. He was so great. Well, actually, he was not that great. And then when she literally starts to become a tree in what is maybe a cursed meadow, she realizes like, oh, I'm bigger than that. I'm part of the world. And when she says like, I was the ground Haven was built on, like she's like, oh, no. I'm not just someone that someone else was controlling. I'm of the world. And I was kind of focusing on that. I forgot what it's called, but it's a certain type of meditation that you seek. Like there's a moment of, it's not nirvana, but there's a certain moment where you experience great joy at being able to coexist with a world that's so beautiful. So you like look at like the way the light is shining through the leaves and you're like, wow, I get to exist in the same space that exists. So I'm part of that. I am that. So that's kind of like the moment I was going for with her, where she's like, oh, I am the wilds. I am this place that the place that gave me hope was me. So her moment of when she like sees,
their descriptions there were brilliant. Because you talked about like, how the light comes through the tree. Yeah, go. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just want to co-sign and be like, yes, that was dope. Yeah.
But when like the moment that she sees, like we learn her story of looking out and being punished for coveting what's outside of the wilds, and then you're kind of like, okay, maybe that's not related, and then you see her see a little girl who at the moment you're like, is it now or is it then? Like, we don't know how much time has passed. And what is time anyway, when you're a tree that's like part of the wilds. And then she like reaches out and causes herself, but also a tree, to fall over and give herself hope. And so that's kind of like, you were the person that manufactured that hope from seeing the wilds. Like that was always you. Like,
yeah.
And so I wanted that really powerful moment for her to be like, oh, the strength was in me. And it's very like, the dancing
it was all along. Yeah.
But it was always in her. She's because like, when people are like, how did you get to be the way you are? And you're like, I've always been me. I don't know. Like I was different before, but I was still me. So I think that's what I was going for with her.
It's fantastic because it's we just laughed about it. It's a trope. It's a known trope in that, like, oh, what you needed was always in you.
Yeah.
Yay. Cue the rainbow, right. So but the way that you did it, I like too that we are allowed to, I think, because you don't confirm that that she actually saw herself, even though we know she saw herself. The tree says, I saw a child that I'm hoping was me, because I want to believe that I inspired myself.
Mm-hmm.
So you give us an out in that might not have been. It might have been somebody else she was inspiring, probably was her, just based on the way that the story plays out. But it leaves room for interpretation of, wow, what if it was somebody else in Haven,
Mhm.
that, just happened to be in the same spot that she was inspiring.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, and like that in and of itself, like even if it wasn't her, that moment of hope still exists for her.
yes.
So it's still there. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's beautifully set up. I get to the end of episode 5. I'm like, hell yeah, let's ride. Let's go get them. And now we're going to get to why I'm still mad at you,
Mm-hmm.
because you robbed me
Mm-hmm.
of my vengeance,
Yep.
which I love you for and I'm mad at you for all at once. It
Mm-hmm.
is the payoff of payoffs without paying me off, um, in the way that I expect. And that was what I said at the top, which was the payoff of this entire arc is that you don't give me what you make me expect to get.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty. That's sort of the point, is that no, it's not going to go the way you expect. We get a little bit. There is
I had
a
to be a little nice to
satisfying,
her.
yeah. There was some satisfaction. I had flashes of, I forget the guy's name in Game of Thrones, who basically gets eaten by his own pet.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
yeah,
The guy that gets eaten by the wolves.
by
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's very reminiscent of that in my mind, in terms of, um, a satisfying. Okay, this is what you get. Um, Let me start here.
Mm-hmm.
The This is the first episode that we get that has, that starts with no music.
Mm-hmm.
And she says they're all dead, and I swore, what the, and had to stop, and I went back, and I was like, no, she didn't. Dude. I, they're all dead, and so it's like you're mad, but you're like, wow, what a brilliant choice. The I've wrestled with why this is uh disappointing and satisfying all at the same time. And it's not disappointing because it's a disappointing end to a story. It's not that. You're disappointed for her,
Mm-hmm.
because it's very much a, and again, I'm going back to Kill Bill in that, the line from, Michael Madsen, which is, that woman deserves her revenge and we
Mm-hmm.
all deserve to die.
Mm-hmm.
And Kill Bill doesn't, I mean, you get your payoff, but not in the way
Mm-hmm.
you expect. Um, the, it's just interesting, choices. Like, you don't look down at the end. It's not Mortal Kombat. You don't look down and she has now killed. It's not Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where, yep, they all deserve to die and all of them are now dead,
Mm-hmm.
by his hand. This is a, whoa, okay, so just some raiders showed up,
Mm-hmm.
which, quiet as it's kept, I in my mind, I want to believe that Thomas was in this raiding party. I do.
You
I
know
want
what?
to believe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thomas was in that raid.
Yeah, that's. I was
Sure.
hoping just like just give me that.
Yeah.
Give me that Thomas somehow went out,
Yeah.
developed, joined with some raiders,
Yeah.
came back, and just wiped everybody out,
Yeah.
because that would be
Sure.
very satisfying to me. This is a gruesome, and like, it's not like people, like, there's one murder in the entire story,
Mm-hmm.
in the episode, but it's the way that you, and again, we talked about this before last time we were, chatting, and I was like, man, I didn't know that you had these skills. Well, I really didn't know you had these skills until I listened to this episode. And as somebody who has edited audio for a time, I know how hard that is and how much time that takes. And this was so well done that I was jealous of how, I was like, I need to start sending Kelly my stuff. Because the one, I was like, where did she get that sound? Are these sounds you made? Did you make these sounds? Did you go and record them? Or, do you have a secret stash of sounds? So it's so well done. the way that you blended this and you edited it again went along with your own the way that you describe what she sees. It's her tone is very even keel. Like she's like nothing surprises her anymore. She's pissed because she came here to kill everybody, and now this moment has been robbed of her, and she's seen so much and understands who she is. She comes back at full power and has nothing to do with all of her strength.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about this episode and why you did not give me the satisfaction that I wanted, in this episode, and yet it's still so very satisfying.
I was thinking about moments that are cruel to the character but do good storytelling, and kind of communicate the message that like sometimes you don't get a heroic moment of death or anything, right? Like sometimes like that's the way life is. Like someone that's so mythological to you can just go in an instant. And just like you can find out like someone that held so much power to you, and you can find out, oh, well, they died like 10 years ago. And you're like, oh, like I didn't like I will never get closure. I'll never get to tell them how they hurt me. I'll never get to do all that stuff. And then I was thinking about like I was inspired by it's kind of cruel, but like have you seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
Oh yeah.
The way Anya dies, where it's like it's just a second, and it's not even, she doesn't get this death scene, she doesn't that, or like in The Wire how Omar dies.
Yeah.
It's just nothing. It's just it's done.
It's a kid. Yeah, like the last person in the world you expected. Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know who this kid is. We don't know his life. He just comes in and takes out this mythological person.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was going for, which was like, she has built her life, because you can build your whole life to something. And then so you'll find out that due to outside sources that don't care about you, that's taken away. So that's kind of what I was going for with that. Like I wanted her to kind of realize that just like how she realized she's bigger than Haven, the world is bigger than her. And the world isn't your revenge story. The world is the world, and you have your revenge story, but like that's not always going to work out. Now I was like, well, she has to talk.
I was like, yeah, it's like, so yeah, talk to me through a couple things on that. The choice to, she finds Elder Rice, and he's already been stabbed, with a saber, seemingly dead, but not quite dead. And so she's pissed off because she's like, vengeance is taken from me. Funny enough, he's holding the coin from episode, I think 2, from that flashback. And she says, it seems so silly now. I love this line, and we talked about it a little bit. She says to him, after she realizes, oh, okay, you're not quite dead. She says, and I thought this was interesting, I was hoping you'd recognize my face when I killed you, when we wouldn't recognize her face because we've never been told what she looks like. So I found that full circle, was interesting. He's still caught up in his, I didn't want my sin to, get out there. He's still, very much. She asks him, you killed my mother. Why? He never gives a response immediately. Well, I just failed you. You framed me. Why? Oh, I just failed you. You exiled me. Why? And he's like, well, really wasn't trying to have my sin, get put out there. And he still tries to gas her up again by saying, well, they're not like us. And she's like, I'm not here for any of this. We find out that he's her father. This is it. And she throws up into his wound.
Yeah.
Which I said, okay, that's kind of awesome. But it's a moment and it's done. Like this is a major reveal that when you said it, I was like, why didn't I see this before? I should have figured that out. So it was nice in that it's like, wow, she's still surprising me this deep into this. I was not able to sort that out or make that connection. I knew something was up, but I think it's because she had seen Elder Rice as somebody she wanted to marry, so it never entered my mind that this might be her pops, which is extra creepy.
That's why she pukes.
Yeah, it's
Well, that was kind of my goal there.
Yeah.
Was to have, my goal was that most people would be like, oh damn, he's her dad.
Yeah.
Like when you find out, then you could go back and listen to it and you could be like, you know what? He was acting like that. What does that say about how we look at women in general, that as listeners, we had no idea he was her dad and we thought that what he was doing was sexual?
Wow.
So that was like my goal, was that like, and later she says that, right? She's like, in Haven, I was someone's wife or I was someone's daughter, and how easily the two conflated. And I kind of was like, that's kind of how some guys treat women, is that they're either someone that they could be with or someone that could be their daughter. And a lot of times those same guys will treat like someone that they're with in a paternalistic way. And what does that say about, like, what does that say about our society? And her kind of coming to that realization too, right? Because to her, she thought that.
Yeah.
And everything I did, I made sure that it was never over the line for him to do to her. But you knew something was wrong, and something was wrong.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my goal with that moment, was to get people to be like, well, then how do I see the world? And like, how has the world affected how I see things?
What I love that you've done here, and this is difficult to do, for the very reasons you just outlined. It's really interesting. You know, the closest I can get to, and this is, it's even as I'm thinking about how, I don't have any notes for this. This is off straight off the top of my head. And so I'm spitballing here, but it's an interesting dynamic, because the way you described it and how you got there is like, whoa, okay. And I'm trying to think of anything I've gone through that is similar, in that you say, all right, how can I tell this in such a way where it lands without being too much in your face?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I mean, there are some folks who, I don't even know how to explain. I guess the closest I can come to is like, sometimes you can make a point too much.
Yeah, or it's like it comes off edutainment-y,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, I get it.
It's like I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some shows that like they do a great job. Like, I don't, have you seen The Boys on Amazon?
Oh God, yes.
So that I feel like is a perfect like media with a message type thing. And then there are some things where I'm like, this is cheesy, dude. Like, not The Boys, but like other stuff where I'm like, I don't know, it just feels very after school special, and it's like kind of dorky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This lands perfectly. Like
Thank you.
You are telling a powerful story with a female protagonist that breaks all the rules, has metaphor for days, and it still somehow remains a story that entertains while it informs, and doesn't over-inform to the degree that I tune out.
Yeah.
And that's and even as I say that, I'm apologetic as I say it, because it shouldn't be that way. Things should be allowed to be what they are.
Yeah.
And I'll pull back the curtain a little bit myself. It's why people have asked me for years. They're like, why isn't your main character in Thamro black? And why isn't he black? And it's because I grew up in an era where there weren't any black heroic leads. Like most of the heroes I grew up watching as a kid were white, you know. And so when I made him up, you know, this is a character I made up when I was like 12 years old. Or that, you know, not, you know, most of the characters got developed later on, but initially I was 12 when I came up with this concept. And so I'm watching He-Man and Master of the Universe. Interestingly enough, Eternia in that world has an area that is like black. Yeah, I think they show up for like one episode or something like that. But for the most part, Eternia is just muscled up white dudes,
Mhm.
in this area. And so this is what I grew up watching. And so later on, as you start to get a little older and start to see, well, okay, society is sort of this way,
Mhm.
you start to think to yourself, all right, I'm a black dude writing fantasy. There aren't a ton of us.
Mhm.
And you look at the bestsellers on in this genre, and there's not a lot of black names on the list.
Mhm.
You gotta scroll a bit before you get to them.
Mhm.
And so I kind of made a conscious choice of, well, if I want this to get out here, I better do it in a way that is non-threatening. And
Mhm.
this was
Yeah.
thinking on that. And sometimes I felt like, I would read certain stories that had a black hero and it felt like a black story. Okay,
Mhm.
this is a black story. So we're going to put over here
Mhm.
in the black section, as opposed to the first time I've seen it where, didn't do that and it made a ton of money was Black Panther,
Mhm. Mhm.
and, that was as recent as 2018. So
Yeah.
this is how long it's taken to get there. I think it's even harder to tell a story like that with a female protagonist,
Mhm.
and you've managed to do it in such a way with these themes
Mhm.
and these metaphors and this particular story, and introduced the Kill Bill element, which is generally what you almost have to do to
Mhm.
get dudes to want to buy in. You
Mhm.
think about Beatrice Kiddo and Kill
Mhm.
Bill, and how essentially Tarantino had to introduce a story where she's running around with a sword, and it's
Mhm.
a amalgamation of all these martial arts
Mhm.
films to then tell a sort of how we got here version, Kill Bill Volume 2, and get more deeper into the philosophy behind it. And even then, you've got what sells that is the action and the gore and those pieces. You have a fantasy world where you manage to pull all of this off, and then but your story comes through so powerfully, and you do it in an age where that's very, very difficult to pull off. So kudos to you in being able to tell a story that was powerful, that did not water itself down.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that so sometimes there's like, when you get into that kind of like after school especially type feel, a lot of times those characters don't exist other than to be a person of color or other than to be a woman. And I think I was lucky in that I chose to use horror as a genre because I feel like horror a lot of times you can explore so many different like so much social commentary with horror because I think horror pushes empathy. Um,
Mm,
because a lot of times, the killer chasing the final girl through the woods, that is a like a, a metaphor for like male power or for sexual violence or something like that. Whereas like anybody watching, Friday the 13th is like, oh, I would not want to be chased by Jason through the woods.
right.
So it kind of pushes it as like, so then wouldn't you not like it to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you and I think my focus too, right, was like on writing about experiences and issues that this character, because to me, this character exists, right? Like, so this character really experienced this stuff, and all of these themes were explored through, like, you know, uh, really scary, like a guy that's making people into marionettes, and like eh, that any person would see that and be like, don't want that to happen to me. And then from there, it's kind of like, well, then do you see how people don't like not having autonomy?
Mm,
So it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't, and I think it's just that it's not just like this female character being like girl power, which feels very like 1995. Like it's like this character being like, no, I'm experiencing like some really real stuff that like I'm sure you can relate to on some level. Like you
yeah.
would want to experience what I'm experiencing, right? So then when I tell you that this sucks, believe me.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of the feel of it as opposed I don't I think it's just writing from experience. I think if you write from experience and it's or not from experience but with empathy, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, like, also my character goes through stuff I've never been through, but I thought, well, what if this happened to me? Would I like that? No, I wouldn't like that. Or like, how would I feel? Like, how would my idea of who I am or of of people with power, how would that change if this thing happen to me. So like writing like that, if you write with empathy and you write whatever is happening to whomever, that person had to get to be that way somehow. So you can imagine like, well, if this thing happened to me and this thing happened to me, then maybe I would feel this way. And if this other thing happened, this is how I would react. I don't know. I just feel like all of your characters, you should be able to, even if they're a villain, you should be able to look at them and be like, well, if I was pushed this way, I mean, I guess I'd do that. I don't know. Because imagine, right? Like even Elder Rice.
Yeah.
Imagine if all you know is male power and you like having that power and that's your value. And the only way that you can get validation from anybody is if you make them give it to you. You would never let that be taken away from you ever, because that's all you know. He's a terrible person, but it makes sense why he is the way he is. So that's a very long-winded answer to what you were asking.
No, you nailed it. This was hard to pull off, and yet you pulled it off, and you pull it off in a way that is entertaining. And it's hard to look in a black mirror, and you make us all look in it. I've already told you things that even as I was listening to it, like the Thomas story, I'll go back to that and it's like, geez, that thing pulled up some memories. And it's like, whoa, man, there are things that just the totality of it, what you just said in terms of why we wanted the payoff, how we expected, and why you denied it. And you said, the world is bigger than you and your revenge. I don't know if you know how powerful that statement is. Because it is. And you're like, man, even as you just said this, like, holy crap, man, I didn't even think of it that way. It's really bigger than all of our revenge. You rarely get stories are not supposed to end the way the world goes, because these are supposed to be our escapes. And you give us an escape and then you take it away. And you plant us firmly back in the real world. And you're not supposed to do those things and they work. That's not supposed to work. It's not supposed to go that way. And that's, again, the beauty of this. That's the payoff. That's the point. I loved your line too, where Elder Rice says, you look so different when you came in. I thought you were a man. And she says, would you have exiled me if I were? And he's like, no. This is the line where I was like, the hell no, he wouldn't have. And he's like, nope, I would have killed you. And it was like, I remember, I paused and was like, holy crap. I can't believe this dude just said that. By the way, I don't know who you got to voice Elder Rice, but he's brilliant.
He's great. I love him. Yeah. He's a friend of mine from improv, Greg Smith. He is a really amazing actor. I love working with him, and I've had him guest on my podcast a couple of times. He's a great friend, and I had always wanted to work with him. And even though his voice sounded a little bit young, I still was like, I know he can capture what I am looking for.
Yeah.
And so, we just did a quick session, and he, first try, he knew what I was going for. So it was really great.
It was great. And it's an interesting choice. I was wondering how you were going to do it, because again, the way that the episode unfolds, she's sort of just walking around looking at the carnage, and then happens upon Elder Rice, and he's alive. And you're like, holy crap, this dude's actually still alive. Holy crap, it's somebody else's voice. I've been listening to, 6 hours of this thing, or however many hours of it. And all of a sudden, here's somebody else. It's the only episode like this where you hear, and I thought that was a very interesting choice. And the most startling, apart from the dialogue and, their conversation and the implied way that he meets his demise, I think is his attempt to kill her. And the fact that she drops the voice recorder, and then when and everything cuts out, it kind of reminded me of Blair Witch in the sense of, I was fearful for a moment that you were going to end things there.
I had a long.
You almost did, didn't you? Yeah.
No. I wasn't going to, but I purposely was like, I'm going to put a long silence in between so that people are like, wait, and then the music would come in. I wanted people to be like, no, this isn't over, right?
it was definitely that, in that moment. The and the fact that she's so nonchalant when she comes back on, like, oh yeah, he tried, I had to take
Oh,
him out. Yeah.
so he didn't try and kill her.
Oh, I thought he did.
No. So he's like, help me, help me. And she's like, okay. But she's lying. She's not going to help him. The
Okay.
whole time she's going to drive that saber further into the wall so he can't leave.
Got you.
So
So
she's
what
just
exactly
kind of,
happened? That's just him reaching out. He's just struggling. Like, so he was never really any threat to her. I thought he was playing possum there for a sec.
no,
Okay.
he's on
He's
last
done.
legs. He's done.
Okay.
He's done. And so uh, he's like, help me with this. And this is like supposed to mirror the conversation that they have when she's in the cell.
Right.
He's like, we'll be safe. And she's like, we'll be safe. And that's what she asks him. And it's a lie. And he asks her that, and it's a lie. She's like, we'll be safe. And then he's like, okay, help me and we can leave. And she's like, okay. And then she goes towards him as if to assist him to leave and just drives the saber in.
Ah, okay.
So that's why she says, you should have killed me. Because she's like, if you'd killed me, I wouldn't be doing this to you. Also, I wonder if you noticed, this was like a little bit of a writerly moment. So there was, before that in episode 5, when she's like, oh God, like these guys sucked. They like sent me to die.
Yeah.
They're probably going to be like eating rib bones while like dogs are snapping my bones.
Mm.
And then at the end, she's eating rib bones in a tavern.
Yes.
The dogs are snapping his bones.
Yeah. This was there were two things I wanted at the end, and I noticed that you mentioned leave coin on the table, after she's in the tavern, and part of me is like, is it the coin?
Is it that coin?
Yeah, is it that coin?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I also like, that's the other thing, right? Is that he's holding her coin. He's in her room, right? He's chosen to drag his body up some stairs to die in her room.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to cinematize his own life. Like, he's like, wow, what a great end. I'm going to die in my daughter's room. And she's just like, doesn't care. She sees him and is like, oh, this is stupid. He's holding my coin. I don't even care about that thing anymore. So it was also kind of about like the martyrdom that like a lot of people like that kind of do, where you're just like, what are you doing? Like, why are you in my room? Whereas he's like, wow, I'm in your room. I'm dying there. Like, I just wanted that kind of juxtaposition.
Yeah. I thought that was great. I love how you left it, where she says, it will feel good to have the road under my feet again.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't take anything, because why would she, from her room? Like she's beyond all of that. I want to know what else happens to her. And that's really the only thing I'm mad about with this whole thing. Is that I don't know what else happens. And so let me ask you this, because I know we've been going for about going close to 2 hours. So I just want to ask you a couple other things, and then I'll get out of your hair. Thank you again for being on.
Thanks for talking with me. I appreciate it.
No, I and hopefully my goal with this, when you mentioned this, was to really pour myself into it. And, when we had these discussions, to let you make sure that for you, that you knew that my goal was to try and know it even better than you did. And say, all right, because it's important to me that you knew that I took it really seriously. And hopefully I've done it justice with the questions that I've asked.
Yeah, no, for sure. A lot of the questions you ask, I'm like, wow, I'm really happy someone noticed that.
Oh yeah.
A lot of times when you write stuff, you're like, you can have, because, sometimes I notice with rough drafts or something, right? Like, where I have this whole world in my head and I haven't made that clear on the paper. And it's like, so it's nice to know that that you connected with the project as well. That was really great.
Yeah, it's the choices that you've made, in this, like you nailed all of them, and it's one thing, and this, it's one thing to come up with something, to conceptualize a world. It's a whole different thing to build it. It's a whole other thing to build it in such a way that just linear. I'm trying to say that word, so that it goes in a straight line.
Yeah.
That it actually connects all the dots. That everything that you introduce pays off. That your theme isn't lost. You're doing all this with first person, breaking on purpose the rules of story structure, defying all the things that you're expected to do, and doing it in such a way where this character is always vulnerable, even as she levels up. And to make the choice to not give her the expected payoff and have that land in a satisfying way is hard just to do on paper. You then have to act this thing. And so you've got to do it in such a way where you deliver a performance where you're every single voice with the exception of Elder Rice at the end. You somehow pull that off. And I know this from having narrated and played a character in an audio drama and having gotten notes myself where people are like, well, sometimes I got confused, where you're narrating and you're the next voice I hear, delivering dialogue, even though I might be doing a voice, doing that. People have told me that, it worked, but it's why I don't do that anymore when I'm creating things. If I'm now acting in something that I wrote, I'm not narrating for that reason, because I want the listener to be able to dissect and to very clearly grasp what I'm trying to put down on the page. You on purpose left things vague at some point, to the point where we talked about it. I'm like, well, what happened to these sisters? And you're like, oh, well, you don't know because she doesn't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, okay. That's a bold choice to do in the first episode of a thing that is becoming, and to have somebody to take a risk like that. And because you don't know how that's going to land with your audience, you don't know if they're going to go beyond that. They might stop there and say, oh, I don't know what happened. And now I'm used to simple stuff, that, I can just dissect, just digest and keep going. These are all very, very bold choices, that you chose to tell. And then on top of that, you go and get a score done that, while it fits, you run the risk of it competing with your story, in this. So to do all of that and to do it very well, my hat's off to you. This is just beautifully done. It is a fantastic story. And like I said, if the commentary I can make at the end of it is, I'm mad at you because it's over. I don't know that there's, that you can give a higher praise, than that.
Thank you. That's really kind. Thank you. And that means a lot too, because I respect your work. And so it's nice to hear the source matters. The source of the praise matters. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. This is good. It's really good. Yeah.
Thanks. But yeah, I think the story of Exile is probably done. I'm already working on 2 other.
Yeah, what do you got coming up? What can you share?
Well, so I have 2 ideas for similar. Basically, I want to release some more stuff that's similar structure to Exile, of direct address, first person. So I have logs from an exploration of an abandoned space station, and then I have tapes from an exorcism, which is probably going to be pretty scary. And then right now I'm working on this thing called 13 Days, 13 Shorts that's run by my friend, also named Omar, but Omar Najam. Okay. And it is where you have to create a new thing every day, the 13 days leading up to Halloween. And so each day has a theme. So the first one is the 19th, but it's it's a short story collection, following, or I guess it's one short story in each episode, or each day's theme is a new chapter.
Okay.
And it's kind of Hardy Boys-ish. It's these twins that it's children's, it's sort of children's literature, where it's these 10-year-old detective twins who are famous in their town because they solved the mystery of the um what was it, of the dog napper of River Valley or something, and then they discover a murder and they have to try and like be 10-year-old detectives discover like solving a politically motivated murder. So it's kind of like comedic and silly, but like still cute and scary, I guess, and also sad. I have learned that like I said this to you before, my genre that I like to write in is just called sad horror. Like
You have not. That is
that's my genre. It's just sad horror. So like it's gonna make you feel some sad things, but also be like probably gross and scary.
I'm here for it. I just found out because now I'm like stalking your Twitter. I just found out that I think you had mentioned this to me before, that you're streaming as well, right? You're
Mhm.
video game streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I just started getting into this. Sadly, I did not know that it was like a thing. People like the closest I came to watching anything on Twitch was Critical Role.
Oh yeah.
And so, that was it. And, I haven't even watched that in a bit, but now knowing that, I didn't realize just how entertaining, and I don't know why this is as entertaining to me as I would not have thought I would sit and watch this, but you find yourself sitting there watching somebody else play a game, and you're like, why am I interested in this?
Yeah.
And yet you are. And then when I thought about it logically, it's like, well, that's really no different than anything else you're watching. That's a sport. Mm-hmm. You're watching other people play a game there as well. Mm-hmm. It's just that this setting is more intimate and you can interact with the player.
Yeah. Different streamers have like different brands, right? So some people are like, I'm just really good at Fortnite. And so I just play Fortnite and you watch because I'm very, very good. And I don't do a bunch of like personality stuff. The kind of thing that my like brand, I guess, is like, come hang out and play some probably scary games. Have you played Phasmophobia? I've been playing this game.
I'm terrified of scary games. I'll tell you, I'm assuming, given that this is your, genre of choice, that you've played survival horror games.
Yeah, I play.
Okay,
I play
Resident Evil, all that, right?
Yeah.
So you remember the first Resident Evil came out on PS1?
Yeah. Okay. I remember the opening of that with the actors.
Yeah. It's the greatest voice acting because of just how, I hope that's not Chris's blood. Just the way that they do.
Follow me. It's like that. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's the way they did it, and the controls in that game are so bad. They're awesome because you can't, they do it that way on purpose. That game scared me so bad I couldn't play it at night.
No, really?
Yeah,
oh my God.
I had to play it while the lights were literally on everywhere. And as the time would start to creep past 8 p.m., I had to turn it off.
Really?
And I played it multiple times, but I was scared to death playing it.
Okay, this game, okay, you should not play it, but it is a game called Phasmophobia. Are you familiar with it?
No, but so you play this and you stream it?
I've streamed it, yeah. So you can play it in VR, but I was like, hard pass. I absolutely will not be playing this game in VR because that's too scary. But so you're a team, you can play with co-op with your friends.
Okay.
And it's like online co-op. You're ghost hunters and you go into a haunted home or a haunted school or a haunted whatever. You go to haunted places and it uses voice recognition. So you talk to the ghosts, and if you say things like, I'm scared, the ghosts will be more active. And you have to like hold crucifixes and like throw salt and like use EMF detectors to see if there's activity. And it's pretty scary. It's fun. Yeah. It's like I've had my friends like who are bigger chickens than me. I'm a pretty big chicken, but like they'll be like, they're like, oh, the ghost only responds when people are alone. And they locked me in a bathroom with the ghost. And then they'd open it and like be like, here's a crucifix and throw it and then lock the door again. And I was like, you guys, the betrayal right now. I was like, I'm stuck behind a tripod in a dang bathroom and this ghost is in here. Like horror.
So you can literally lock somebody in this VR game in a bathroom to the point where your character can't get out.
Well, so then the ghost will lock the doors.
Wow.
because when it gets active, they'll lock all the doors or they'll turn all the lights off and you just have your little flashlight. And then when they're hunting, you have to turn off your flashlight and literally be quiet because the ghost will hear you and come like choke you or something.
Okay, that's awesome and scary. All that. Now, so I'm just thinking ahead. Are the ghosts, they're completely artificial, they're complete AI, or is there
AI.
Okay. I'm just thinking that what would be really interesting, and I'm wondering if they're, the fact that I just thought it means that somebody else thought it up.
They plan to have players
people do it.
Yeah. And that's actually similar to a game that I play a lot called Dead by Daylight, which is like asymmetrical multiplayer where one person is a killer and there are 4 survivors and it's iconic killers. So it's like Freddy.
Yeah.
Or not Jason. Michael Myers.
Yep.
And there's like original killers too. And then you're just survivors that are like working on generators and trying to like get a door open. And then they just catch you and like, yeah, it's very fun. Very fun, but scary.
That does sound scary. When can we watch? Because now I want to watch you like stream and watch you play these things.
No, so you don't have to play it. You watch someone else play something scary.
Again, I couldn't finish a game. Like I couldn't play Resident Evil 1 now without being scared. I don't know if you ever seen the Omen movies.
Yeah.
All right. So I made the mistake once of watching the Omen 2 after midnight.
Oh.
Which is just, just the music alone of that terrifies me to no end. And the funny thing about the Omen is that like it's not somebody like Damien's not like coming to get you. It's just random accidents are killing most of the people that are trying to get him. And so in fact, the thing that I think that does the most damage in that movie is that crow that keeps showing up. If you think back to that, and like the music that accompanies the crow is scarier than anything that happens to anybody else.
Oh my God.
But to this day, if like I can't really listen to that music or watch that movie if it's dark. I sat up and did not sleep that night. And this was years ago. And yet somehow, I don't know why, but my mom let me go see The Omen 3 in theaters by myself. So I like it, and yet I'm terrified by it. So something like that would give me nightmares. I would freak out on that. But I'll watch you play it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because you're not in danger. I usually stream like in the afternoons Pacific time on weekdays, but last week I was working a lot for Super Punch stuff, so I didn't stream all last week, which I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss my community. But
yeah, people were like, while we suffer, you do not stream. I saw somebody say something.
I know. I was like, I know. But yeah, it's twitch.tv/Kelly Nugent, which is KELLYNUGEE. But usually around like 3 p.m. PT on weekdays I stream. But sometimes I'm streaming because my schedule's been kind of out of whack because now Super Punch came back from hiatus, and so I've been playing on E-League's channel sometimes, and so it's been like different. But I have to update my schedule on Twitch. But if people I usually tweet right before, so if you just follow me on Twitter, you can find it there, which is Kelly Nugent, the same thing.
Got you. Okay. All right, so we got that. You said you got some other projects that are coming up. Sounds like there's about a gajillion places that we can find you online and watch you do your thing.
Yeah.
It's probably the easiest place to do it is just your website, I would imagine, right? KellyNugent.com. Or no?
Update that thing more often. Yeah, my website is kellyknugent.com if people want to see it, but Twitter is probably actually the best place. That's where I'm like constantly updating stuff. Yeah. So that's probably there. Yeah.
All right. Well, Kelly, thank you once again. Fantastic. Again, if you guys have gotten this far, then and you haven't listened to it, then shame on you, because we literally just spoiled the entire thing. But hopefully you've already listened to that and now have listened to this and have deep dived or deep dove, whatever that is, with us. So thank you guys for listening. Kelly, thank you for podding with me. And heck, man, when you got something else, maybe when we do the thing that if I can sneak you into what I'm working on, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to.